The Pulse of Providence with Steph Machado on WPRI.com.
Thank you for watching Pulse of Providence. I'm Steph Machado, and we are continuing our conversations with the candidates for Mayor of Providence. If you missed our previous interviews, you can find them on WPRI.com or in your podcast feed. And now I'd like to welcome Democrat Brett Smiley, candidate for mayor, back to the program. Brett, thanks for coming into the studio.
Thanks for having me, Steph.
So how are things going on the campaign trail? Tell me the number one issue you're hearing when you're knocking on doors, and has it changed anything about what your top priority will be in office if you're elected?
Things are going really well. We're just over 7 weeks to go. I'm so proud of the campaign that we've built and so grateful for everyone who's helped bring us to this point, the thousands of volunteer hours and tons of organizations and individuals who've endorsed my candidacy. You know, the issues really haven't changed too much since I started my campaign over a year ago. Families across Providence are still concerned about the quality of the education their kids are receiving in the Providence public schools. There's still real concern about public safety in the city. And everyone's concerned about these basic quality of life issues in the neighborhoods, everything from how we fill a pothole to the quality of the snow removal in the winter, the streets and sidewalks that need to be repaired, these like core quality of life city services issues that impact everybody in Providence.
And you've made your campaign really about getting back to the basics and those city services. I hear a lot from residents who say, my taxes go up every year, but the services I'm receiving in exchange are not getting any better. They mentioned the potholes, they mentioned the snow removal. Will it cost money to get those services up to a higher standard? And if so, what would you forego in exchange for spending more on those services?
So first of all, I do think that we can do a better job for the same price. I mean, in snow removal, for example, we pay. Residents, myself included, have seen snow plow trucks driving down the middle of the road, plow blade up, or not doing an adequate job, running down the same street 2, 3, 4 times. We're paying those. Those in many cases are third-party vendors. We're paying them. They're just not doing their job because the city's not holding them accountable. So I don't think that some of those things are going to cost any more money. But I would like to see us deliver a higher level of service, and that's why I'm focused not just on making sure that city vendors and city employees do the best job possible, but also making sure that the other people who consume services in our city, like our nonprofit institutions, pay their fair share, because that's part of the way in which we're going to be able to have a more livable, cleaner, safer, healthier city.
And you did work for this administration briefly. What isn't going right that is leading to people saying, there's potholes on my road, my sidewalks are uneven, the snow isn't being cleared? What's not going right?
I think it's a question of prioritization. You know, the mayor can only focus on so many things, and his or her team can only focus on so many things. And if I get elected mayor, my priorities are clear. These quality of life issues, city services, holding the state accountable for the quality of our public schools and the changes that were promised in the midst of the takeover, and restoring a sense of safety to our community. Those are my priorities. I've been relentlessly clear about that for the last year and a half, and the voters in Providence have a chance to choose what they want going forward, and I've been quite clear about what my priorities will be if I'm mayor.
You've been the fundraising leader throughout this campaign. Second quarter campaign finance reports are coming out August 1st. One of your competitors, near Villa Fortune, released that she raised more than $52,000. Gonzalo Cuervo on this program the other day said he raised more than $100,000. Will you say how much you raised in the second quarter?
No, we'll disclose when the reports are due on August 1st, but I can tell you that we will continue to outraise the PAC, and I'm proud of that, and it's because there's people from around the city and around the state, honestly, who know that in order to have a healthy Rhode Island, we need to have a healthy Providence. And they're excited about my candidacy and continue to support me financially, which is terrific.
Now, we know you're in the lead when it comes to the money, but there hasn't been any public polling in this race in terms of who is in the lead for the votes, but you have done internal polling in your campaign. How are you doing?
I'm really encouraged about the progress that we've made, and I know what we need to do in order to be successful here in 7 weeks, and I'm confident in the quality of my team that we can get the job done here in just a few weeks to go.
Are you in the lead in your internal polls?
Like I said, I'm really confident and encouraged about the data that we've gotten back. I won't share specific numbers, but we're going into Election Day in a strong position, full of optimism.
Might be a perception that if the results aren't bad, why won't you just share them?
Internal polls tell you more than just a snapshot of who's up and who's down, and so I'm not going to share that information, and most candidates don't, but I can tell you that we remain optimistic about the path ahead, and we're going to work our tail off over the next 7 weeks to make sure that all of the hard work and all of the thousands of volunteer hours that have gone into this effort pay off big on election night.
Voters were asked in that recent poll about your ethics fine that you received last year related to receiving campaign finance donations from government contractors when you were the director of administration. Is this an issue that you're hearing voters talk about when you're knocking on doors, that they're concerned about this?
The issue almost never comes up, and I'm prepared to address it when it does.
Question for you that I'm hoping you'll answer. If you could not vote for yourself, which of your other two competitors would you vote for?
That's a tough question, and I've said it many times on the trail this year that we're blessed in Providence this year to have 3 candidates who are honest, who are ethical, that are running for the right reasons. That hasn't always been the case in Providence, and I think voters in Providence should be encouraged and appreciative of the fact that we've got 3 good candidates this year. And so the case that I try to make is that it really comes down to 2 things: priorities and experience. Because on many issues, honestly, we have the same position, but what's different is what are our priorities and what's our experience to actually run the city of Providence, a city with over 4,000 employees, a $500 million budget. It's a big job, and I think we need someone who's ready to get to work on day one, who's got the professional experience to have actually run large organizations, large government organizations, to be effective.
And where would you say you do differ on policy with Councilwoman LaFortune and Gonzalo Cuervo?
You know, I think one of the clearest differences is with respect to public safety. We have, last year in particular, had a particularly violent year in Providence. The proliferation of illegal guns in our city is a major issue. And I've been outspoken about the need for more and better policing in our city. And I continue to speak out about the need to have an additional police class so that we can have real community policing, so that officers are permanently assigned to a district, so that neighbors can get to know their police officers, get them out of the cruisers, into the community, walking the beat, riding their bikes, and focusing on getting illegal guns off the street and violent crime, and on some of the kind of quality of life crimes like the motorcycles and the ATVs. And I think that that's an area where I've spoken much different and more clearly than the other candidates for mayor.
You've been endorsed by a number of sitting city councilors, I believe 6 at the time of this taping at least, from the more moderate Democratic wing of the council. Some of the Democratic councilors have endorsed your opponents or have not yet weighed in on the race. Are you worried at all that you're not progressive enough for the city of Providence?
I'm not worried about that at all. I think progressive is a term that has evolved, and I'm not sure everyone has the same understanding of what that means. The nice thing about a campaign, and certainly in my campaign, I've got a reputation as being a bit of a policy wonk and being very detailed about my campaign plans. My website has a robust set of campaign policies up there. Everyone can see exactly where I stand on the issue, so no matter what that term or any other political term might mean to you, you can go say, well, actually on the issues, do I agree with him or not? Because it's all there for people to decide for themselves.
Is there a label that you use for yourself, a moderate, a progressive?
In terms of ideology, no, but the label I prefer is pragmatic, which is that I want to just get things done in Providence. I think that's what we expect out of mayors in general, and I think that that's what we need in Providence, is a mayor who can just get things done. We're good at writing plans in Providence. We're good at analyzing and convening, but sometimes we fall down on execution. And so I'm excited to get to work immediately and make real decisions to move the ball forward on so many of the good plans that have been written over the last couple of years.
You've been clear that you support, as you just mentioned, increasing the number of police officers in Providence. You don't support defunding the police. Would you want to keep Colonel Hugh Clements on as the police chief if you're elected?
So I've also been clear about city personnel, particularly the directors and leaders of departments and agencies like the chief. I've not made a specific commitment on anybody. I don't think that's fair to do to people. These are people's jobs and livelihoods, and so I've made no commitment to anybody on any position, because I think once you start commenting on one, then you have to comment on the rest, and that's not fair to do to people.
Well, so then you may not answer my next question, which is what about Commissioner Perry?
The same answer.
Are you committed to hiring a fire chief if you're elected? We've not had one for a number of years, if folks don't know.
I do think the city deserves a fire chief, and I think that the fire department, in addition to being a very important obviously city function, saving lives regularly, is also a major budget driver for the city, and I think the city would be well served to have a full-time fire chief.
I've been reporting on the license plate cameras that are being installed as we speak in Providence by the police department. They're scheduled to be turned on later this month. They haven't gone through any sort of legislative process, which has sparked concerns from both city council people and the ACLU. What do you make of that?
So I can't speak to the process. I'm not in city government right now, but I can say with respect to the technology that I think that technology such as cameras can make our city safer. And I believe that there is a way to do it in a way that respects civil liberties and a person's right to privacy, but also helps the police better do their jobs. And so I'm very open to and supportive of the use of this kind of technology to help make our city safer.
You might not be in city government, but you certainly are an observer of what's going on. Do you think it's right for the cameras to be turned on and used for a year without having gone through the city council?
Again, I wasn't around for the procurement, and I don't know exactly how the process came to be that they were hired, but I think the technology can be of value to city government and to public safety.
What do you think about the privacy concerns of folks? Because these cameras, it's not like the red light cameras where it takes a picture of you after you've run a red light, right? This is taking photos of every car on the road, not just if they have committed a crime. What do you think of those concerns?
My understanding of the technology, and I think that there's a perception, with any sort of surveillance technology, which is a real concern, but that the data is stored for a very short period of time, that it's run against another database of either wanted criminals or missing children or anything else, that I think if it saves one life or helps return one kidnapped child, that temporary check of the plate against a known database can yield public safety improvements and progress, and I think could great comfort to someone who's a victim of crime or, God forbid, lost a child or something like that. So I think that they can be addressed, and I think it's a good idea for either the city or the police department to continue to explain how it works, to debunk or demystify what might be happening, to put people's concerns at ease.
I believe you voted in favor of the $515 million pension bond in the referendum in June, but we don't yet know if Mayoral will actually be able to borrow the money. The administration has to get below a 4.9% interest rate in order to actually borrow that massive amount of money for the pension system. If you are mayor, are you committed to borrowing that money as soon as you get below 4.9%, or would you look at other options?
So first of all, I think this is why the bond passed, because they improved the proposal to the taxpayers and to the General Assembly, and these guardrails, including the interest cap, was a really positive change for exactly this circumstance. It's a 5-year authorization. I did vote in favor of it. I've been clear that not only did I support the pension bond, but I supported it as a tool, as a way to get into the state pension system, which remains my focus. I think, to understand how we got here, it's largely driven by the fact that previous mayors skipped payments. And that's how we got this unfunded liability. Were we in the state system, we would never be able to skip a payment again, and we could say to children and grandchildren, you don't have to worry about ever having to go through this again, because the state would divert other state aid and make sure we made our payments. We also would save transaction costs, have access to other investment products that we don't currently have access to. I think it's the way we should go. It may take the bond in order for us to buy into the state system, and so I remain interested in that policy going forward, but it will only be if it's financially viable because of interest rates.
And is that feasible to enter the state system? Because there are these court decisions binding the city to certain agreements with retirees.
It's absolutely feasible. The city of Central Falls negotiated their way into MERS, the state system, just a couple of years ago. It's a negotiation between the city and the state retirement board, but I believe it's a real possibility for us.
If you're elected, would you seek to get the city's schools returned to city control, and how quickly do you think that should happen?
So the state articulated very clearly where they want to see the Providence public school system in the midst as a result of the turnaround plan. We're way off the mark on those right now. So my first priority is to make sure that the state delivers on the promises that were made. As you well know, we've got an election for governor as well. I look forward to working with whoever the next governor is to make sure that the state fulfills its end of the bargain and actually makes the changes that were promised in our school system. And hopefully they can do so in the next, before the initial 5-year term expires.
So you wouldn't seek to end the takeover early?
I would not. I think the state has been given 5 years to get the job done, and I want to make sure that they do so.
And staying on the topic of schools, the city council is currently considering a proposal to put on the ballot for voters this fall to create a hybrid school board. It would be half elected, half appointed. Right now, the school board is fully appointed by the mayor, as you know. What do you make of that proposal?
You know, I do hear regularly from parents, families, that they feel like they don't have an adequate voice in their child's education. And if an elected school board helps them feel more connected, then I think it's a proposal worth considering, and it will ultimately be up to the voters to decide. I am concerned that we're injecting more politics into the school system and not less, and I am concerned about the equity implications. As someone who's been campaigning for a year, running for office takes time and money that is not available to a lot of people. And so I hope that if the voters approve this and we move forward, that we just don't have parents who can afford or individuals who can afford to running for the school board, because that I don't think will resolve the question of everyday parents feeling voiceless in the process.
Would you vote for this plan on the ballot?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay. What do you make of how Providence has appropriated the ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act money? I believe when we spoke at this point more than a year ago, you had the idea that it should be used for items in the budget in order to make a larger pension payment. That is not what happened at all. Do you think that the money was appropriated well?
Honestly, some good, some bad. I think it's hard with $140 million to love everything in it. The city made some great investments, and I think that's terrific, but the thing that I've been so concerned about, we have these underlying financial challenges. This is one-time money. And so spending one-time federal funds on recurring expenses is a challenge. I was at a community meeting not too long ago where they were touting that we were going to be increasing street sweeping in the city. And somebody asked how they paid for it. Oh, we're using ARPA money for that. I mean, that is like the most ephemeral city service there is, which is street sweeping, which is great, and we do need to do it, and we need to find a way to work it into the city budget. But that is a recurring expense with no residual long-term value being paid for with one-time funds. That's irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. And so I think there's a lot of examples where we're using this ARPA money for recurring expenses, and it's not leaving the city fundamentally better off. We're not improving our infrastructure. We haven't done an economic development project as a result of it. We haven't improved the quality of our school buildings or school systems or our rec centers, or so many of these like permanent infrastructure needs that we have that would have been a more appropriate use of some of those funds.
Listen, budgets can be amended. Some of this money isn't going to be scheduled to be spent immediately. So if you were mayor, would you propose to change that ARPA budget at all? Is there something that you might get rid of in there or that you would add?
If I am fortunate enough to get elected in 7 weeks, we're going to get to work right away, not just on a transition, but on the first budget that I'll have a chance to do, and we're going to take a look at everything and hit the ground running on January 2nd or January 3rd, whenever the swearing in is, so that we can get to work immediately on everything.
Brett, you worked for Mayor Lorza. He has not weighed in on this race yet. Have you asked for his endorsement?
I asked for his support early on, and hope I can earn his vote. He and Stephanie are voters in the city, of course. I don't expect him to get involved in the race, but was proud to have had a chance to serve in Providence, and am trying for every vote, his included.
And my final question for you, Brett, who are you supporting in the race for governor?
I'm not, of course I'll vote, but I'm not going to publicly endorse any candidate for governor. I hope to be the next mayor of Providence, and I want very much to have a productive working relationship with whoever the next governor might be.
All right, Brett Smiley, Democratic candidate for mayor, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Providence. If you want to see our other candidate interviews, you can find them on WPRI.com or in your podcast feed. Don't forget to register to vote by August 14th if you want to vote in the September 13th primary. And again, thanks for watching Pulse of Providence, and we'll see you next time.